What's going on, guys? It's Frito here for your Overwatch. I'm in a bad mood because the culmination of poor decisions and strategy that Blizzard has been implementing with Overwatch 2 is reaching a breaking point. They said it was going to be different this time. Come on, baby, just come back for the sequel. I've changed. You gotta believe me, honey. I won't abuse you with bad metas, poor balancing, a poor patch cycle, whack communication. It's all happening again. When they keep saying Overwatch 2 is a sequel, I didn't think we'd be updating all the bad things they did from the first game. Overwatch 1 was all about too little too late, and they're setting themselves up for failure by doing it again on multiple decisions. And some of the things I don't even think are at the top of the community's complaint list and are going to fester if ignored and just get worse over time. So we're going to talk about it, break it down, and hopefully some changes can come through in time for season 2 before it gets even worse. Today's video sponsor is Manscaped. With the holidays coming around, you gotta treat yourself or a buddy to the best in the business when it comes to male grooming. Today, we're looking at the new Performance Package, which has everything to keep your jingle balls merry this holiday season. The Lawnmower 4.0 is waterproof, cordless, with a built-in LED so you can use it in the shower. The patented skin-safe technology is the reason I became a dedicated fan of Manscaped years before they sponsored the channel. Treat your holiday tree with delicacy, and you can stuff your stocking with this pair. Ball deodorant and toner spray will deck the halls with a wonderful scent. New to the collection, the Weed Whacker nose and ear hair trimmer, super fast and easy to use. Skin safe technology, of course, this one's a must-have. The Shears 2.0 luxury 6-piece stainless steel nail kit is engraved with the Manscaped logo. Their stuff is super quality. And for a limited time, you'll get 2 free gifts: the Shed travel bag to put everything inside, and Manscaped's anti-chafing boxer briefs. The new Performance Package will make a great gift for yourself or a friend. And you're going to want to take advantage of the Black Friday sale that's even better than our normal discount. It's 25% off. Don't forget to use our promo code Overwatch to save 20% off and free international shipping and get your 2 free gifts. So we're going to go down a list of a whole bunch of I told you so's of things you should not do with this game that they did do. And the chickens have come home to roost, Bobby Boucher. From where I'm standing, Blizzard can balance the game in 2 ways. When the game is under what I'm going to say a largely praised meta, then leave it alone. I have never been of the opinion that it's a good idea to just rearrange the power structure of the game just to mix things up, because too often do they mix things up and make the game far worse. The game we had in beta was so much better than the game we're playing here today, and that should never be the case from a beta to a launch. There's so many problems, it's hard to know even where to start. So we'll break it down bit by bit. First of all, the way they handled the Sojourn problem is completely unacceptable. While I hear their argument that she isn't oppressive for most players, she is completely oppressive and game-breaking at a certain tier of play. And their logic doesn't pan out whatsoever, because it's not like Widowmaker is a character that's popping off in the majority of ranks either. They don't buff her up to ridiculous degrees just to compensate for that. No, instead, they let a sniper class character be a little bit weaker in the tiers of players that don't have elite aim. Why wouldn't the same thing apply to Sojourn? And let's just say if we knew exactly the numbers of the upcoming Sojourn nerfs that were teased, where they're going to reduce the power of the railgun and increase the power of the primary fire, is what it sounded like they were cluing into. Does that sound like something that should have been difficult for them to do? Because I thought we spent years of time in Overwatch 1 figuring out how to rework the engine in order to have fast, responsive, hotfix changes. We played Overwatch 1 in those Twilight years where there was frequent changes, and we had that whole era of time with the creator experimental cards that they put in easily because of all this infrastructure they put in. And now they're telling us that changing the game will break it, and we have to wait for weeks for the mid-season patch, then wait for weeks for the season 2 patch, when I thought you could just do the numbers changes at any point. That was the whole point of saying that. So maybe they just haven't communicated this, that the plans they had to have ended up not working with the sequel or something. I don't know. But all I do know is having multiple month seasons where there's a big change at the start and then we wait for weeks and weeks and weeks for a change in the middle is not going to work for this game. They need to sculpt the game based on evidence that they already collect. Okay, that's fine. But also informed opinion from the players that understand these things, which I don't think they're doing nearly at all. And the major problem I have with this, they're setting themselves up for failure even in Season 2, because what we're getting is just like Overwatch 1, where the adjustments that need to happen to the current problems they've just created with different buffs and nerfs and changes will take too long to gain the necessary data for them to make the decisions that we could have told them were going to be the case weeks and months in advance. And then by then, we all get a brand new hero to play that's going to change up the metagame probably, if they're any good. And so who knows what the new problems will be down the line. And oh yeah, they're changing the DPS passive, it seems like, but also saying they won't revert the Genji nerfs in that case. And I hate all of this, all based on the fact that they don't want to do preemptive balancing, where, for example, they don't want to look at a character like Kiriko and say, well, adding a cleanse to the support cast might giga buff certain tank heroes, especially ones that would normally be shut down by disables, like Roadhog. Top tier players knew that this would be the case immediately. In hours of playing the new build, all the content creators were in agreement that, oh wow, Hog's gonna be pretty sick with Kiriko in the game. So it's not a surprise to anyone. So while I hate the idea of tuning just for the sake of changing the game for diversity's sake, I love the idea of tuning thoughtfully in order to compensate for obvious game changes down the line. We don't need to introduce an idea, have it be broken forever, and then gain all the data to learn how broken it is, and then balance it. Going back to Sojourn as an example, it wasn't a surprise to anyone that if Sojourn rails were easy enough to hit and farm, that she would be giga busted at the top tier. That was the case in Alpha. Why did it take from Alpha to Season 2 to learn how to balance Sojourn to not be the most oppressive character Overwatch has ever seen at the top tier? And let's get on to some other crucial balance problems that must change. Support as a role, I think I know what's gonna have to change before anyone enjoys the role besides me. Okay, I love the role. But the reason I love the role is because I play tech shooters, so being incredibly strict with your positioning and cover usage is the basis of that genre. So from learning all those skills, combined with the hero shooter and arena shooter skills I knew as well, I'm finding Overwatch 2 support to be my favorite role. But most players do not know how to do that because you trained them in a different way for Overwatch 1, and the game doesn't really tell you how to adapt to utilize the support passive. Passives in Overwatch are required to understand to properly learn your role or get value out of it. It's one of the reasons I think Hanzo's useless, among others, but if you make a passive that says the whole role snowballs after a pick, well then Reaper and Genji will be better, and Hanzo will be actually useless because he can't do any of the things that the passive does. Now, in the same way, because using cover masterfully is such a high skill floor requirement for most players, a good percentage of the player base does not use the support passive at all. And so therefore, just lock Moira, who can not have to think about it in order to have any fun with the game. I think in theory, if everyone really buckled down and studied their positioning, players might feel different about the support role, but let's face it, that's not going to happen. And it's just like saying, well, in Overwatch 1, the main tank position was the most punishing. And if you just buckled down and studied every map and learned the anchor spots for the front line, and only played those positions perfectly, well then yes, main tank was a sick position. And it's the same thing now in Overwatch 2, just the pressure point is on the back line. If you anchor the back line, then you start to feel the agency in the role, but that's a lot to learn for a lot of players. If you want to learn how I went from plat to GM, pretty much detailed in my most recent guide on the subject. I'll make more support videos, I think. I love the role. But just like the Overwatch 1 main tank was miserable because of how much knowledge it required just to get the basics down, it's the same thing with Overwatch 2 support. You have to be ahead of the backpedal rotations and stagger fights, so much so that you can't be an easy target. And that's not how players want to play Overwatch, really. And so when they're wandering around in the open space, it's like they never get a passive at all. And that isn't good. Does Overwatch 2 really even need passives, by the way? This is an idea that I don't think is necessary for the game. I'm just going to be honest. On one hand, they wanted to have it so that it was another balancing knob that they could tune in order to overall change the power of a role, but I feel like they haven't really done that appropriately. And the result, honestly, is just some heroes are better than others in the role. And also, obviously, some passives are literally better than others. So good luck with that one, Blizzard. Okay, what else can we complain about? we've got more. Counterpicking is back. Yep, in the beta, I was super excited to say that you can't really counterpick in Overwatch 2. Well, thanks to the 30% ult charge retain on every single roll now, that has backfired immensely. I'll admit, I thought it was a fun mechanic as a flex player, especially on DPS. I loved abusing it, but my buddy SVB was 100% right on this prediction that it just incentivizes counterpicking, and I'll specifically say it just makes counterpicking too easy. Because let me highlight an example that fully explains this very clearly, I think. Tanks being easily counterpickable ruins the game, because now that every role can retain some ult on hero swap, any of them can choose to counterpick you. Whereas before, losing a tank or support ult was a really big deal, and having a disadvantage in order to counterpick in the neutral might lose you the game because ults are that good. But now what you've done is added more overall ults in the game, which I don't think is good as well. But on top of that, it's possible for 2 or 3 of the enemy team to counterpick the one guy who's popping off, so much so that you in turn will have to swap. Because the gap of ult between them swapping and you holding your pick, that you're not going to have an ult advantage to punish them for swapping. So let's think of it like this. Previously, if 2 or 3 players swapped on the enemy team to counter someone, they would have drained somewhere between like 60 to 130 ult percentage. It doesn't work based on percentage, it's actual points, but let's just say, depending on which characters they swap to, the points or whatever kind of average out to that. They used to lose all of that. And swapping your whole team comp like that, or a significant chunk of it, like 2 players or maybe your tank, used to be expensive. Now they get the benefit of picking the thing that counters you and also keep a sizable chunk of their ult. And maybe think of it like this. Let's say 3 heroes on the enemy team swap at 30% ult and they all keep it. That's like saving 1 ult, okay? So instead of losing that 1 ult, you gain it and the counter picks. Too much, okay? It's just a dumb idea. It was cute on DPS because DPS ults are the weakest of the 3, but not enough players are talking about how bad this is for the game. They are noticing the counter picks being so good. Obviously, they added a major counter pick piece in Kiriko, but the point is you can't really leverage a different playstyle because so much of hero power is based on ults if the enemy gets to swap and keep ult, which is funny because we've done some tests on this running custom games. I remember especially with so much talk about hero bans, me and SV ran some pugs where we watched top tier players try out a mechanic that we did called ult reset on checkpoint. Now that was super draining and maybe unfun because you had to just blow your ult regardless if you got the checkpoint or not, because you would lose it anyway. But we actually kind of liked it because it meant you had to go use it aggressively, as opposed to this system where it just sort of softens the edges of that strategy. Like you don't have to think about it. It's just pure rock, paper, scissors is rewarded rather than needing to go make a play with it. With the system we had, it was beneficial for you to run in and try to clutch a checkpoint, retaking it, rather than try to play too safe and set up carefully and all that, because the ults you had were going to be reset, and it makes each stage of the map play a bit more discreetly, almost like the same way that you lose your ult at the end of a control round. It's the same idea where you win that stage of the map, but you have a moment of reprieve where, okay, now maybe we'll start from 0 and try to counter their comp a bit more and gain an ult advantage and stuff like that. So I would rather ults be drained rather than retained. And I am kicking myself for not being harsher on this mechanic when it first came out. But in my defense, I had thought we had the Overwatch 2 Blizzard that was willing to quickly change things when they weren't working, right? I've been rather tame on my criticism of their balancing decisions, but that was because I thought we had the new cadence of balance where they would try something, if it didn't work, change it. But that's not what we got. Instead, we have somehow worse than Overwatch 1, which is just not acceptable. And my final point here for the video, I don't like their overall strategy. If they're going to continue doing this boom or bust balancing with this wait and see approach without being thoughtful with their changes ahead of time, then we're going to have weeks and months of metas nobody really likes or that incentivize degenerate playstyles, and there's not much you can do about it. It's like the things that are best in the game game now, you just got to pick. It's so much harder than it was in beta to craft your own playstyle. And that's what made me fall in love with the game and speak so highly about it. Well, now they took it away and made the game more about picking meta heroes. And without a draft mode, which yes, I'm back on this train again. If we don't have a way to thin out those decisions for us in our play experience, then you're going to always see rank specific heroes dominate their given rank. It might be Sojourn in GM, and it might be Junkrat and Moira down in the metal ranks right now are just hilariously too easy. And what are the players to do? They look up to Blizzard and say, balance this for everyone all at once. And Blizzard says, well, we'll try that. Just give us months. And we don't have time for that. You're already adding a new hero in weeks. And this has set me up for a lot of worry, to be honest. I have more worries to say that I'll say in some more videos. It's supposed to be Thanksgiving coming up. I'm supposed to be thankful for what I have, but at the moment, I just feel like Blizzard really impressed me with a long list of things, and they just kind of went back on a bunch of them. And I really hope that they turn the corner on Season 2 and ramp up the improvements, because waiting and seeing the effects of really punishing annoying metagames is not what we want for Overwatch 2. No. I don't want to have to play the game for weeks just so you get enough data to know things I could have told you in 10 minutes. Back to old Frito ranting. I'm sure many of you will be relieved to know that I am in fact human. I do bleed like the rest of you, but not when I'm using my favorite razor. That's right. Check out Manscaped. Use our code Overwatch at checkout to get 20% off and free international shipping. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave it a like, and don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon to actually get notified when our videos come out. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.